Welcome back, subscribers. We're here with my partner Franklin, and we're going to rehash a little bit of information that I had went over. The way that we do this and we format this is um, I do audio recordings of things that just like either come to me just off the cuff or something that hits me from maybe a new something I read in a news article or a video that I've seen, or maybe just a general conversation. I'll run into somebody and then we'll have a general conversation, and then it gets me like, hey, I want to go ahead and record this and keep a data profile of that information, because I just have so much stuff that comes on, through my day, but it's looked through in a different lens because of me having a better understanding of histories of things, of how things work in business, but then also like where we're going towards in the future. So we're gonna get into it today. Hey Frank, how's
Ye
it going?
How's it going? Yeah, and then, you and I have spoken about this, where a lot of the stuff we talk about, right, it's not gonna make sense to people because one of the truths that you have to come to is that this is a game, it's rigged, the people at the top all know it, so everybody's involved, whether or not they're aware of it or whether they're incentivized to be involved, right? The money, power, fame, whatever it is, and uh, your topic, right, in the Intermarifica, you were talking about the Pope, right? And the average person was like, "Who cares?" Right? You mentioned in the video, "Who cares what the Pope has to say? I'm a Protestant. I'm Jewish. I'm Hindu." Right? And it's irrelevant. The Pope is a figurehead for how the game is supposed to move forward in this reality, right? And so he's the bard of their system. It's the highest position that those individuals can get to if they're not of a specific bloodline, right? It's
Yeah,
the
you gotta have like a general practitioner essentially, right? You gotta have like, and it's a figurehead that's been in place for thousands of years, that has it's just a branch. Like if you think of like a pyramid, you have to have some kind of top tier hierarchy that, from a general sense, puts out initiatives worldwide so that everybody can kind of do it their own way. Be like, hey, we want it this way, but you Muslims can kind of conjure your way you want to do it, and the Westerns can do this, and so on and so on. But generally speaking, you need to move in this direction. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and we have to accept that anybody that we're able to see or interact with or know their names, they're not running the game, right?
Mm.
That's behind a veil of secrecy, of hidden power that's not in our domain to understand because that's just the way this game is run, right? And you make a point of saying these we refer to the song "Us and Them," right? And it does become a sort of like grouping of individuals. And there are individuals here who have cheat codes to this reality and run it. And there's nothing you can't stir the ship. You can't make the earth rotate in a different direction. It's just the way it is. And you likened it to uh gang infested neighborhoods. And I like that. I said, yeah, there's places where you just don't go because you don't want to interact. And that sort of is similar in the spiritual realm. It's like, yes, there are entities that you can interact with that will agree to give you things in exchange for something else, but we don't want to engage with those. That's not who we are. Otherwise, we would have been born in those gang infested
That would be your
neighborhoods.
business, right? You'd
Yeah.
be born into it. And that's why, by having that separation, if you look at it like as in a business model, you're gonna there's you've got like the workers, the blue collar grunts, right? Then you've got the management, and then you've got the presidents and the people that are so that same mechanism, or modeling, works through higher level, orchestration of the planet. And because like they always the conspiracy theorists always they're so surface level when they're looking at these people that are basically sacrificed as being the scapegoats. They have to have those people. That's why in every business, anybody that's been in a corporate structure knows that everybody is somebody's bitch, at the end of the day. And that's set up for a reason so that if something bad happens, you've got somebody to, blame it on and then kick them out, get somebody new in, just replace them.
Right.
And then the
Because
lower the level is, like the more, lower level, like down the blue collar. I was watching something last night on tunneling and, that like the history of just building tunnels, and the Romans and how far back it goes. And and then where it came into modern era, they call these guys sand hogs. And they were like a dime a dozen. They had all these immigrants that were flooding into the United States, and it was super ultra dangerous work. And guys were dying. They're getting blowouts in tunnels, drownings. They're getting succumb to gas or the bends because they've got they're way below sea level, and then they were just dying like all the time. So they just replaced them with another guy. And back then you have all these immigrants that are flooding in. It's just like there's no the system was set up to have this churning effect with humans, using them as like as like a conveyor belt. But the engineers at the top, they didn't have any there's no repercussions on them other than maybe having to deal with the finances or something, so it's like the guys in the top hats, they don't deal just like everything else, and then there was one where they were going to do a tunnel underneath the Thames in London, and the first one failed, and they had funding from the government. But again, the government, they don't care, just get it in there. It'll help, commerce and in business and make more money and move people around better. And but at the end of the day, yeah, they don't the lower level people that think that they know, but the people that have, let's say you have somebody that passes, that dies, that's a worker, they want retribution. They want to have some kind of, somebody to blame for it, other than the guy that decided to go down in the hole in the first place is the one to blame, you know. Um, so you have to put
which
somebody in place that if the shit really gets really deep, you can fire that guy and replace him with another one, even if it's on the top tier.
which is yeah, and that's sort of what we want to touch on, where you place the onus, right, the responsibility on the individual, right? I went into the thought it was their duty or their job to dig a mine, right? Go underwater, suffer the consequences of just interacting with commerce, right? And we're speaking to individuals who are more of the entrepreneurial types. Which like, no, you're not the worker bees. You're seeing that work needs to be done. So now you're trying to figure out how to navigate around it. There's a it becomes almost difficult to understand that when you're speaking at a level of understanding of what this reality is. And it's almost like the people who run this game are following different orders, uh, different rule sets than the average person. And it's almost like they're just giving the opportunities for you to experience existing in the material world. Whether you want to be the guy digging ditches or you want to be the guy running businesses, they're indifferent to it. They don't care. That's your individual choice. That's where you have to make the decision to determine how you want to experience this reality.
Yeah,
But
I
you
think
also have to understand that this world is structured in such a way to cause events to come, and you have to pay attention. You have to look at your neighborhood and say, is it falling apart? Like, is the infrastructure falling apart? Do is there is it going into the gang territory? Then it's time for me to move. Right? You have to pay attention to your surroundings and see what would be best for my family in these situations. Uh, and
yeah, I think
digging
I
ditches
didn't
wouldn't be one.
when I first came into it was, and learned it slowly was through contracting. And when I first started doing my own stuff, I was doing everything, and there wasn't anything that I really, well, there were certain things I wouldn't do, but you know what I mean? Like for the most part. But then as I got more established, there were things that, yeah, I would just farm it out to somebody else. And some of the lower level jobs, like like ditch digging, literally like doing groundwork stuff, whether it's like pouring concrete, anything in a house, like there's stuff that's like there's a huge difference between a trim contractor or cabinet guy to a guy pouring concrete or a roofer. There's a huge difference. They're not capable of it. And I never saw that until I came to the South, and there's so much more business that was going on that I got to see it in, you know, uh, a greater abundance, and finding out that those guys that are roofers, that's what they do, or guys that pour concrete. I'm like, that is like the worst work ever. It's the worst. So it's so bad on your back and hot, and they do it every single day, and it's like but they're not really necessarily aspiring to like graduate out of it. And when I would talk with them and find out like, hey, are you, how long have you been doing this? And when they get into like the 20-year mark, you're like, really? That's really, you want to do this? Like, oh, I don't know anything else. I can't. Or if something would happen on a job and it was something that was outside of their scope. So they had to do a little bit of carpentry work, but they're a concrete guy, or they had to do a little something that was off the main narrative, that they literally couldn't do it. Like to have a roofer use a circular saw to cut a 2x4, and measure it and watch him do it relative to a trim contractor doing it, like it's very precise and perfect, Not only he has to cut it on the miter box, but the way a framer uses a circular saw opposed to the way that, like hacks, guys that work a shovel, and they're like, they don't even really almost know what end to use. And you're like, do you have some experience with it? Or like, how is it that you aren't interested in doing these other things, right? And it was just, that's when I started learning it as being, these guys were made for this. Like this guy, when this guy was born, he was born to do this job. And that's when I was doing all these different skill sets. I was under the impression that everybody could do basically the same stuff, that you would want to do it as precise as possible and do this at the highest level degree possible of whatever that tasking was. And that is absolutely not the case. And then I started looking at that from like the construction field and then going into like, say, medicine, doctors, professionals. And it's the same exact thing. I was just in an environment where I was just in so many people's houses and professionals' houses that I would have to manage the guys on the blue collar side, but then I'd have to do the contracts on the business on the professional side, and then getting to know them as we did the work and finding out that it's generally pretty much the same. It just turns out that their skill sets are in different areas. Like, it was very, very uncommon for me to find somebody who was like, say, a doctor. One guy in particular, he was a hand surgeon, and he liked working with woodwork. He liked woodworking, like on the side, like as a hobby. And his whole basement had all these woodworking tools. And I'm like, what are you doing, dude? I was like, you make one mistake. I said, it's not a question of you liking this. It's if you just make a mistake, your career is toast. Like you're gonna grind, there won't be any left. And he's like, I just really like it. I just really like to play. I know it's super dangerous, and it's like I shouldn't be doing it. And if my insurance company knew from his hand surgery, his medical insurance knew that he was doing that on the side, they'd drop him like you know. So it was just interesting to see that yeah, that there are like like lower level. I just call it like consciousness saturation. I think that there's like that line that's in Caddyshack when Danny Noonan's walking down the fairway with Judge Schmales, and he's talking about, what he wants to do and go to college and everything else, and Smales says, "Well, the world needs ditch diggers too," and walks away from him. He's like telling him about what he wants to do in his future. But that's like, it's like a really cold representation of exactly the same thing, and you have to have these people that are in these spaces, or else the whole reality does not function, period. You still
Yeah, and it's similar to, yeah, Goodwill Hunting, right? Where Will is sort of this genius amongst his friends, but all his friends are they're just diggers, right? They're not going to amount to anything more, and uh, it's not of a determination of value of the individual. It's just that's what you're capable of. And it you sort of mentioned it, right? Capable of, right? In terms of like their DNA, right? Or their structure or the culture or the race, whatever it is. You had mentioned in one of the videos about the navies, right? Where the navies are instructed uh, not to involve themselves in the local community. You'll
Mm.
see people selling humans at the market, right? And it's not for you to change because that's their jurisdiction, that's their culture. So regardless of whether it's DNA, cultural upbringing, belief systems, what we're trying to say is individuals are programmed,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
once they're programmed, it's instilled in them. There's um there's a moment where you try to wake up other individuals, and we talked about this, right? We talked about a cosmic censorship where other individuals are, no matter how much you tell them, they're not going to see what you're seeing. No, a lot of true community thinks still believes in politics, right? It's the other side that's the enemy, but not my side, right? Um, and when you try to wake them up and you try to tell them, guys, this is rigged from the top down. There is no way you're saying anything important that isn't wanting to be said. Right? There's no way. The amount of cancel culture that's out there on these private platforms is for a reason. They're not letting you know these other aspects, but we're letting you know this. Right. So how does knowing that the game is rigged, yet we are still here, and you speak at a spiritual level, what would you say is the point of coming here if you are destined to be a ditch digger?
Well, I know from a couple different angles. So if you take one of the stories that comes to mind is like the sports stories have this in it, like a lot of this kind of ingredient, if you will. Um, like the Bo Jackson story. He came out of like this ultra poor family, right? And lived like there was like yeah, him telling about his childhood and how difficult it was and how they had absolutely nothing. And and out of it comes like this superstar, right? So like if you take enough of them and you bind anything, something will pop out which will be extraordinary, right? And that's a mechanism that like from an energetic perspective, that's a really cool thing. Like you can't put your finger on it. Like the probabilities are like zero. You know what I mean? So and then to see that come to fruition is just absolutely just it's shocking. And the storyline is ridiculous. Like I said, if you the Michael Jordan story, that's another one. He, like, didn't even make his, like, high school team or middle school team or something like that, right? Like, you're like, "What? Like, how could that be possible?" And, it's Cinderella. I mean, and we love it. Human beings just love those storylines. So, like, unfortunately, like, if you had to take, whatever, a couple 100,000 people that are just ditch diggers, and out of them turns into this, whatever, that's that storyline. Everybody is just so, I don't know, taken by it. It's worth writing about, people talking about it, and things like that. And it's because otherwise, I think if it was all vanilla, it wouldn't be interesting, right? Like if everybody had the equal fair share shake at everything, then, like you take like Bo Jackson's family, you're like, you telling me that nobody else in the family had the same DNA that that dude had? And the guy was like, really, he didn't work out. He's chiseled out of stone and he's just like, you're right, the way he was. So, um, uh, I don't know. I think that again, it's like the global, I don't know, narrative or baseline protocol of the reality that we have to have these larger than life stories that are just like if you tell the real story, it doesn't sound even real. There was a movie I just watched a couple months ago about a guy who was he was a Mormon in World War II, didn't pick up a gun, and he would not pick up a gun for anything, and then goes in. He was a medic, and didn't fire a shot, didn't kill anybody, and he survived these like ridiculous engagements with the Japanese, and to the point where in the movie, and I did some reading afterwards, they had to tame the story down because the real life story was just so over the top that they couldn't. They thought that if they did it in the movie, that nobody would, it's
Yeah,
just unbelievable.
it's I think somebody he was like a non-combatant enlist like member. He just didn't want to pick up a gun,
Yeah,
but the accomplishments he did were so ridiculous. Like, yeah, we
yeah.
can't give it all away. It's
Yeah. Yeah, like, he moved, like, injured and bodies for, like, days straight with no food or water, like, it's ridiculous. You're like, "What?" Yeah.
so you had mentioned right, 100,000 people to get that one person, 100,000 soldiers to get that one individual that does that, right? That creates that storyline. That's the Cinderella storyline. We could also look at that as 100,000 lifetimes, right? How many lifetimes does it take for us to break through to just get that one lifetime that is an epic story that you can brag about to others? This sort of conflicts. What is your opinion? Let me, well, we're going all over the place, so maybe it's because we're doing this first, but what is your opinion on individuals having a pre-programmed life, the scripted life, where they choose that experience? Do you think it falls under, I'm choosing this life to be a ditch digger to see if I can break through it or and get the Cinderella story? Or are the probabilities like, nope, you're going to be a ditch digger and just enjoy being a ditch digger and living it until you get bored of it and choose something else?
I don't I think it I don't I've looked at that from, like, like a meditative perspective, from, like, that, like, outside looking in type of thing, like, what would possess you to kinda do that? And the from my interpretation of it is that it's that yeah, like, if you wanna have an experience that's just vanilla, like, you just got worked over, like something real simple, "I just wanna work with my hands, I don't wanna do anything." Or maybe it's a trade-off and be like, "Well, I'll work like a dog, but I wanna fall in love with somebody." Like, you'll see, like, in people's lives that they have, like, these, like, kind of, like, contrasting trade-offs, like, maybe this is really great, right? And this is terrible, and it has that contrast in it. Um, but yeah, it's like it's an anything goes type of thing. Imagine, well, if you listen to all these near death experiences, I've studied the hell out of them, and that certainly seems to be like that's a pretty consistent narrative. And everybody that comes out of it, doesn't matter what their religious background is or whatever, none, some, a lot, that they're just grateful for just the experiences that they've had to be in the environment of reality and something real that's going on, instead of this all-encompassing, like, perfection environment. Like, to do something difficult, and everybody bitches about it, about being in here, um, is great. I mean, it's so challenging. I mean, if you just got up out of there'd be no reason to get out of bed every day. You get so bored of it if it was just perfect. "Oh, today I'm gonna do XYZ and this." And at the end of the day, if you really put some mind thought into it, you'd find that you'd get tired of it. You need some adversity to make it challenging, because if you play the game, you set it on easy instead of extreme, but if you play the game enough, pretty soon you're gonna have to level up. It's just gonna be so you're if you imagine you've got souls that are coming in that are, uh, barely making it in. I mean, you're talking like people that are like supermax prison animal types, to ones that are like, high level people that are, way, way beyond that, would never go in that direction. So it's just this huge, mixing melting pot. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why you hear a lot of people as they get older, nobody wants to talk to anybody anymore. They don't wanna mix anymore because they know, oh, it's like, you've already gotten a taste of how, each individual's kinda doing their thing in their own personal narrative, and it's but, yeah, being an entrepreneur, you have to. That's not part of the equation by saying, like, "I'm not gonna mix with somebody." You should be like, because, like, as soon as you mix that's a catalyst that causes growth to happen. So The people that say, "Oh, I'm just gonna go move up on a mountaintop and just, live in a cabin by myself or whatever, and 15 cats or whatever." Like, well, it's only
That's
goes so
one way.
far, like
Yeah.
that's part of the game. If it was all that really that easy, everybody would be whatever, NFL, MLB, whatever, you'd be the best of the best. But the when it comes down to the most intense situations, there are guys that are better than other guys. You put them under really pressure situations, or in the military has exactly the same thing. That's why the special forces guys, that they're weeding out the guys that they know under these stress situations. We're going to stress them to the max. And if somebody can come out of it, we want that guy,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
So it becomes the more you learn about what this reality is, where you have one of those experiences that just wakes you up right to it, you start to see like there has to be some value in this experience, right? This game, this construct, because it's allowed, right? And so you and I had mentioned that this is run from the top down. There are game controllers, right, with the cheat codes or whatever it is, just running the game. And if we take this narrative of good versus bad, right, that most people believe in, there are an infinite number of ways this reality could be a lot worse given those other individuals and how they exist, right? And what they do with humans. But it's not that way, right? Like you said, we can find joy in the things that we do. Um, one of the things with spirit is you kind of come here, we're so limited here, and there's a reason why that seems enticing, right? To something that's maybe has no form. Taking on a form might be something very novel and unique to experience. Something that experiences certain emotions might come here and love the fact that we suffered, right? An aspect of ourselves like, what? I can suffer? Because you come from a place where you don't suffer, right? Or you come here to experience time, right? The fact that things have cause and effect, and there's a delay in getting it, right? Uh, where maybe we come from a place where things are instantaneous, right? Very digital, holographic, sort of existence. So coming here, I try to explain to people that we might be here to enjoy the suffering of existence, but you should determine what type of suffering you want to experience, right?
Mhm.
So if it's developing your craft, right, or if it's being a David Goggins or like the special forces individual, they're suffering, but they're suffering in a way that fits their personality. Uh, if you want to learn a trade craft or anything, the woodworking, right? You're gonna suffer through your hands or stuff. It's the process of learning. And in our other group, the group where we met, that was one of the notes that was made. That was one of the commentaries that was made that this individual said to suffer is the greatest joy, and I couldn't figure out what that meant until until watching your stuff recently, and I was like, I think that's the entire point of being a human. It's knowing that this moment, this existence is temporary, but you enjoy the suffering, whatever it is, the depression, the shame of your past experiences, the lost love, right? Because it makes you appreciate those Cinderella stories even more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, if you think about, I was first off, I think if people that are like new to this type of thinking, I'll tell you people that, if you think you have a soul, or believe you have a soul, or know you have a soul, however you want to look at it, do you think that your parents created it whenever you were conceived? And most that kind of get to a level, they get to a higher level, they'll realize that, yeah, I came in here from something somewhere else, like was magnetically brought in here. And then when you start researching it from the near death, the NDEs or wherever, all the woo woo stuff, then that certainly starts applying. It making a little bit more sense. And then if you add in the science side, then you've got the holographic reality type of thing that we're, simulation theory and all the other business, and be like, all right, so there's enough stuff out there that's kind of leading this element, like your body it's earth, it's part of earth, minerals of earth, and then whatever it is that's inside you. And right, and science has shown, like, whenever the body dies, when it's weighed, you've seen this, that it releases, there's the energy's released out of the body that it loses, there's a certain
The
weight,
grant is yeah.
right, yeah. And so there's definitely something that's leaving the body, and anybody that's taken like psychedelics or, yeah, transcendental meditation, you'll know exactly that that's most probably the case. So with that being said, then, yeah, moving into these, like, I don't know, I would call them like disciplines more of anything. Like, I use weight training as an example. So I started lifting when I was like 14, and my recognition for building my body and making more muscular was pain, was suffering. I wouldn't use the word suffer, but gosh, if you can't sit on the toilet for a week, after you've done squats, I mean, that's about as bad as it gets,
Yeah.
and you did it 100% yourself. But while I was doing that, like struggling to go down flights of stairs, things like that, in my mind, it's totally different polarization as far as how am I processing this? Like, am I wanting pity from somebody else because I did this to myself? But no, I'm looking at it like this is a success, because I know that the more pain that my body is in, as long as it's not bone pain or tendon pain, that you start to know the difference between those things and muscle pain, where it ends up becoming very healthy, and you're doing good. And it turns into, like, if I don't go into the gym and I don't feel the pain, then I didn't do it good enough, right? I wasn't. And then if you use that as a template in exactly the same thing, but use it in emotions. So your emotions are those same things. And if you get stuck on these emotions, there's a reason why you want to experience them, whether it's like a death of a family member, an animal, a lost love, anything like that. That's just, it kills you, but it has a pain that's so totally the emotional pain relative to physical pain, and then the question would be like, I would have never done this to myself. But what does it do? If you give somebody a really traumatic experience, and then it gives you, time on earth, allows you to have time to process that pain, and then they look back on it, and if they're able to process it, like, again, you take 100,000 people and you give them all the same relative emotional pain, one of them probably, whatever, a few of them are going to come out, and they're going to be able to transmutate it and be like, oh, I totally understand. Like, I wanted it this, da, 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 and then this led to this and this and this. But you're going to get a lot of people that are just going to get closed off. Like, I talked about that friend of mine that was a Jehovah's Witness, and it broke him. Like, you put him into a serious situation, tons of distortion with the family, abuse and everything else, and then he comes out of it and finds out that there's a real world out there, and then he went in the wrong direction. And I remember whenever I was going through this about 10 years ago and, like, communicating this through meditation and stuff, I'm like, this is not a good way to do it. Like, I learned that mechanism of this pain and suffering leads to these diamonds. And I'm like, are you crazy? Be like, these people, they don't, not only that, but they don't know. And they're like, oh, no, no. Well, the reason why you don't want to know is because you're being tested to see really what your root fabric, what way are you
Yes.
gonna go,
Yeah.
and the only way you'd ever really know that is if you were totally blind. You have to be totally in the dark. And then if you look at it from that perspective, again, you take 100,000 people and you get one that figures it out. That's the question. Like, well, how did they figure it out? Like, what is the chemistry and all these emotional experiences that caused this one to figure it out? And all the rest of them were, just used up and turned over in the soil. And then you start comparing stories between people that have had similar experiences. I'm like, I don't know, because they would say the same thing. Like, yeah, I was at the point of being broken. I was like broken and wanting to, like, escape and get the hell out of here. And then coming to realize, like, no, I'm lucky because I can see it, And when I started seeing it from that perspective, like, as I started trading stories and finding out, like, I've got a lot of very strange situations that have happened to me, and I'm like, that's not by chance. After so many times, they're like, well, this must be just their tests just to see how you're going to respond. So yeah, it's really shitty, and it's blind. Like I said, you can't really study for it, you know?
Yeah. And this is not to dismiss right? The trauma that individuals go through, right? Because when you're in the truth community, you learn about the satanic ritual abuse, right? Like your friend was victim of abuse, right? Domestic abuse. And it's not to diminish that in any way, but taking your friend as an example, if he could have had his reality shattered and come out happier, right? Rather than the opposite of where it broke him, right? Where it actually made him stronger. What a great story that could have been. What a
Yeah,
great
totally.
inspiration to other individuals that have suffered the same thing. I had an experience once where I was on a train and I met somebody randomly and we started talking and they were trying to be a drug counselor and they felt that they weren't worthy of being one because they used to be a drug addict, right? And I said, you know, I wouldn't know any counselor who would be worthy more of counseling others than somebody who
Right.
overcame addiction, right?
Yeah, yeah, for
Right.
sure.
And you could see the look, right? That moment in their face that shifted because it is that thing, that key difference, right? It's that you overcame it. And in order to get that Cinderella story, right? That transmutation moment to see it. And you said it's like nobody knows why there's such a vast amount of people and only one or two switch over, but it's constantly seeking that. What is it that is
Yeah, that
causing that?
what you went through, that's like the grail, that like epiphany moment, that aha moment, and you were like a catalyst to that. So that's like if you're involved in an experience, like most humans, we're always looking at people's lives from third party experiences, and we can see everything that like, oh gosh, all you need to do is fix this, 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 and this, and you're fine. And everybody you're telling, they're totally blind to it. And that's why, like, as you get older, nobody wants to hear it anymore. Like, "Ah, I'm tired of hearing this, whatever." And but yeah, in that story, like if you it was a brief conversation, right? You just
Right.
simple, right? But you're
Severe.
exactly right. Like the only way you're really gonna know is you gotta do it. But in order to be like living in who's gonna do that? Like if you scripted it right in the beginning, be like, okay, you're gonna be all we're looking for is the aha, wow, the light bulb went off in my head, and you're gonna learn transmutation of energy. You're gonna learn it. How are we gonna do that? Well, you're gonna live in a fucking gutter underneath a bridge and
Yeah.
the worst of the worst shit you can imagine. You're gonna go through that, and then you're gonna come out, you're gonna have this train ride, and if you knew it was all scripted, you would never be all in. You gotta again, that's another proof of how the reality is probably like a not necessarily like I don't like the holographic type of thing. But that's a good way to explain it. Like it's an experience where you're totally blind and you gotta be bought in to that experience. Like if that friend of mine, Jason, the Jehovah's Witness, if he would have had if his parents were like ritualistic abusers, like used it and it was like Satanism, Luciferianism, that crap, that would have been so easy to identify,
Right.
right? Because it's everywhere, right? But when it's like covert like that, where it's it's covert narcissism, and there's nothing worse than experiencing like being around people that tell you they love you and then they're abusing the shit out of you, where it's like and it's constant daily cringe. Like you're in prison every single day that you have to go do something. And that's absolutely the worst experience you could have. Being incarcerated in a prison, at least you're in a prison. You at least know the rules. You know what I mean?
Right.
You
Exactly.
know? So when you're in one of those types of experiences, it's like, oof. And when I learned it, whenever I remember like reflecting on my experiences with him and the things that he used to say to me, like as he was a living guide to me, because he couldn't understand a lot of things that I would like I would just be able to just do something. And he'd been around in the construction field, like his whole family. He like grew up doing it when he was like 4 years old, and just the way that I would handle things, and he couldn't place it, like, okay, I had all these experiences before, and he was like it was like a mind glitch constantly every time I'd be around him, for like 10 years. There'd just be like daily things that would occur and things that I would react to, instantaneously. and he would just be, like, shocked, and I remember a number of occasions that he would come to me, like, during the middle of the day, I'd be in my office, whatever, once I got out of the field, and he'd be in my office and come find me, and he'd have this look on his face, like, just shock and, like, I don't know how to describe it, like, real confusion to the max. And it was maybe something that happened days prior and be like, "When you did this, this, and this, how did you know to do that?" You know, "When you reacted to this person and I saw this reaction," and he would know the backstory. He would know he knew me really well. He knew, everything about it. And he's trying to place my experiences as like he's watching my movie, and then he's trying to place it with what he experienced. And it just he couldn't process it. He
Right.
couldn't see how.
It's like different languages, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah.
He's just not he understands the gist of it, but he doesn't get the details.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah, we got a lot of this right now. This is exactly where it keeps pressuring everyone to the point where it's like they're trying to break people basically in their minds. And it's there's a lot of people out there now, like if you look at the social stuff, there's YouTube, whatever, that people are talking about it. They're calling it a clown show. Every day there's something crazier, and we're living in a crazy land, whatever else. And it's like, all right, well, how does that apply to you? Like, stop looking at it like all this is on display so that you can plug this narrative into your own experiences, right? And then, even though they're going to be probably a lot more subtle, but everybody has them, these little mechanisms that are inside them, and how you process new information and new things. And if you're just in that dazed state, which most everybody is right now, you're not picking up what they're putting down, and then they're gonna keep pouring it on, you know? So it's like if you wanna break out, then you're gonna have to just say, "Okay, I get what's going on. How is this applying to me in all of my experiences?" And you're gonna have all these subtle if you notice, if you get to midlife, you're gonna have all these little experiences that all add up. And again, if your saturation of the material space is limited, they're gonna be a lot smaller. I think that's why people skim over them. But they're just as important as the big ones, you know? But you're gonna see a consistency. The faces are gonna change, the names will change, the places will change, but it's all the same relative, energetic, emotional mining that comes out of you every time. You're
the
easy to read, you know?
yeah, the patterns repeat because the lesson's not learned,
Yeah.
right? It's like you're
Yeah.
you're being honed, and that's you should see the thread of commonality in your life, right? And that's part of uh these NDEs where they do the life review. I'm like, just do them while you're alive. Right? Do them at night. Do this. Try to figure out what the common thread is. What can you learn? Um, so you talk about this right the all of this show that's going on, that the chaos in politics or whatever. Uh knowing that this reality is sort of a game, that you should be able to see that that's what they want you to see. They want you to see the chaos at the administration level. They want you to see the chaos at the global politics, right? The threats of war, tariffs, because they want you to be aware. They want the normie population to be aware that things are unstable. And going back to your boxing match, mind alchemy game, they're doing that at a social engineering level. You say that a lot, right? And it's like, yes, it's the population that they're trying to control. And there's no, that is their domain, right? Their domain is the masses. You, on the other hand, you're an individual. So you can be aware of where the masses are going and see what is trying to be manipulated and then just step aside, right? Let the events happen, right? Let the events unfold. Uh, one one thing that you and I have discussed before is once you get to this level, it's almost seems very boring, right? And we just talked about the suffering or the enjoyment of emotions, that the Cinderella story. When we get to this point, it's almost like it's difficult to pinpoint what to do because nothing brings you joy other than communicating with other individuals that are at this level and can just do something,
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah, because you
And
don't know what way to go.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's like we're not finding any joy in anything because we're like, well, I'm not going to go waste another, 4 hours out of my life and watch another whatever TV series on Netflix because they're all the damn same, right? Or I'm going to watch another freaking movie and it's all going to be, you know, whatever. Mark Wahlberg is going to be typecasted as a Boston City police officer guy. Like how many of those you going to see, right? Jason Statham. Anyway, it's all typecasting, and it's like, all right, I really appreciate what they're doing as a craft, but let's just kind of like, it's kind of, did you see some of those Arnold Schwarzenegger where he's singing like Careless Whisper, they George
Are the
Michael.
memes or something?
Yeah,
The
yeah, yeah, but
AI
the
memes?
AI
Yeah.
AI redid it, and he's singing, but it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger singing Careless Whisper, and it's
Yeah.
awful. It's so terrible. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And I'm like, that's interesting and funny because again, you have these typecasted guys that you would never see, or Arnold Schwarzenegger doing Sound of Music or something, right? He's the
Right.
woman in Sound of Music, right? It's like, and that's funny because it's almost as if we've gotten to this point of pinnacle of experience and reality that now you can implement in these new things that are it's just a big joke. It's funny, right? But it's entertaining because you want to hear it like it's the first time you've ever heard it before. Even though I've heard Careless Whisper probably a million whatever times, whatever. But it's funny to hear different people's renditions of them whenever they would never be the ones that ever do it. Like what kind of reality is that? So like that's the point with all of the political stuff and the money stuff and everything else. It's like it's it's getting to be so scripted that it's like, all right, well, how do I break out of that? And if can I, it's almost like imagine like two armies fighting, getting ready to fight. Like it's like Revolutionary War period. They're all like squared off in a field, getting ready to cut everybody down. And that's like every experience of everything that's going on in reality. And all you're going to do is just peel out and you're going to sit up on the hill and just be like, all right, well, I'm gonna go in whatever direction there's more guys on whenever it's all done, because I know this is gonna be a mess, absolute mess, and there's no way to get them to stop engaging on one another. That's the other problem. And the same thing happened during it happened during COVID, and then they did the same. I they've primed everyone. It's the same narrative over and over and over again, where they want to get this divisional mechanism that's going on, and it's like they're getting you to stay on one side. You're like a Trumpito, and you're like, "Okay, well, we're gonna, like, implement them in the Epstein thing." And then those people are super anti, because it was all Bill Clinton with that. And then they peel out information out, and it's just like, so what does that do in the mind? It's gotta be like it's like you're on, like, this little piece of ice, like, it's peel off an iceberg, and you're on this piece of ice, and every time that you keep turning around, the ice keeps getting smaller, 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 right? And pretty soon, like, you've got nothing left because all your belief systems have been crushed. And that's like the design of the whole thing, so that when you slip out this new reset, this great reset idea, they'll take whatever because they're worn out. You can just slip everything underneath the rug and they'll be like, okay, this is the way we're doing it now. Great. As long as we've got calm waters, I don't care. So it's the way that they've done it. This is a mechanism that if you go back and you study the old like Greek philosophers, that's what they're being paid by the government to figure out how human beings' minds work, because
Right.
the mechanism of humans have been exactly the same thing as time has processed. And that governance, it's not about control, it's about making it so they don't kill each other, because for whatever reason, and I'm gonna do a video on this, but the before all this stuff started breaking out, I brought this up about the dress. You either saw it was either white or gold or purple or blue, right? And everybody could look at the same thing. You get a room of 100 people, and half would see it one way and half would see the other, to the point where people would be like you could fight over it. I am
Yeah.
100% right. So imagine that same thing, or the auditory was the other one.
Yeah.
It said green needle or brainstorm, and you just hear that auditory, and you can only hear it one way until you were told, "Oh, but it also sounds like this." And then you could essentially, like, reprocess it through your brain to be able to pick it up and hear it, and they're two totally contrasted audios. The frequencies have to be totally different, but it's just all it is a polarity shift, whether it's visual, excuse me, with the dresses or the auditory. It's just a polarity shift. So what does that mean? That means that every human being out there, no matter truth, is completely, it's ridiculous. It doesn't work. Because it could be one thing, and then you're going to have to flip the polarity on that one thing, and it's going to be different from another to its whoever's listening to it as truth. So truth could only be on one side based on like because of the dualistic nature of the reality. And that's super jacked up. So if you knew that way, 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 way back when, what are you going to do to manage and govern that? I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to kill each other anyway. We have to have a system that is cohesive, that both two parties can kind of get along with and have nothing moving towards any real, direction. We basically have to be running on a treadmill. All right. How are we going to do that? And then that's the governance system that we have in place. So like each party has these periods where they're like, okay, you're going to win a little bit and then we're going to win a little, but then we don't actually win anything. And then you're going to do this and back this backwards and do this. And then the people that we put in place, uh, like Trump and the all that economic stuff, it's like you get married up to it and they just go along with it. You want the people, the ones I think in the United States are the most dangerous are the people that have the guns. The gun people are the conservatives. So it would make sense that you have to get the person in place that they're behind. And basically, whatever the dude says, the gun toters are going to be like, okay, I'll do it. Whatever the guy says, I'll do it. As long as it's not laid on your arms. But if you had to control that, you don't care about the people that aren't armed. You care about these other psychos that if they really lose their shit. I had a neighbor, for God's sake, during the Clinton Trump campaign. He was like carrying. He had a pistol on his hip mowing his lawn. And he was saying all this negative shit about Hillary, and the FBI visited his house and shit. And we live in a pretty, like, it's kind of rural. I mean, they're acre lots, whatever. He doesn't need protection where he's at. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Like, for what? And like, no one's going to listen to you anyway. Like, why did you put that shit on Facebook? What are you, stupid? Yes. So, and that's not, if you knew who the guy was, you wouldn't want him on a soapbox and you wouldn't want people listening to this guy. Right. But then that's the intermarifica, like we were talking about originally. It's like, you have to have some kind of like governance over that whole structure. Because if you don't have that, you're going to get soapbox people that are fucking idiots and they're going to say stuff and then people are going to follow that. And next thing you know, you're going to get Jim Jones type of shit with people that are completely off the mark, and how can you bring that back? And that's where the control mechanisms that inside the digitation of the way that they've created the internet in this, this domain that's outside of the constitutional rule because it's owned by the company that puts out the information. So like that's why we're doing all our stuff private, because we're like, we're not pissing around with this stuff. Well, I'm like, if I say something that I want to say, I'm not going to use code language and all this other crap. Like, we're going to be in here because we have a directive. We have interest in gleaning this information and archiving it and making sense out of it to see where the probabilities are for the future to be moving in the right direction. Well, how the hell you can't do that unless, number one, you have it archived correctly, you have it private. There's all these steps that have to be taken, and it's a pain in the ass. And the other way is free. And be like, okay, guys, like if it's free and you can say whatever you want, why would that make sense? Why are you questioning the Constitution? You're a freaking idiot. Like YouTube is not. All these digital platforms, they're on the business platform of them. They have their own guidelines, which is not the rulership is not of the land. So they can do whatever the hell they want. Be like, no, that's not right. Be like, really? It goes anywhere. Imagine like if it's like our information here in the US and it goes over to like China or North Korea or whatever, they're not going to let that shit in. You know, let it in. So, but they can because, they have control over the airwaves. And you could look up the history of FM radio, right? The pirate radio stations. I mean, it was the same thing that they had to do back then. Once people figured out how they could do it, then they're like, okay, we need to have legal identification. If you listen to the FM, most people don't listen to FM anymore. But if you do, they have to put out legal IDs to identify to the system that they have a license to be able to distribute their information. And then to be able to license it, they have to be under the guidelines of the SEC.
Right.
So we don't have that really with the internet because it's so freaking Wild West. The only way to do it is to force the corporations to be the ones that enforce. You don't need to have another federal, agency to go do it. Just have can YouTube make a decision.
Right.
Give them
Make
a
them
copyright
responsible.
strike, whatever. Get them out of here. We don't want these guys anymore. Get rid of them. We got too many
You
followers. Get rid of them.
Yeah, you mentioned the gun-toting individuals, right? The amount of individuals I see that are looking forward to a civil war is ridiculous. I'm
Really?
like, yeah. I'm like, oh, you guys are really planning for this bunker lifestyle, right? I'm like, all right, that's just what you do.
Around
Funny,
you, like
no,
personally,
not
like in
around
your
me.
local
No, no, just
sphere?
in general. Yeah, just in general. Um, the around me, nobody's even thinking that way. It's very
Yeah.
leftist California thinking.
Yeah.
Um, there's a funny side note. When I went to Tampa, I thought LA had bad drivers, right? When I went to Tampa, they were horrible drivers. And I asked my brother, uh, how come nobody's honking at them or yelling at these people, right? These are horrible drivers. It's like, because everybody's packing. You don't want to piss off the one guy that, well, she was like, oh, yeah, that's how you maintain this chaos, but it's quiet chaos, right? There's no
Yeah, because
agitated
Florida's like
chaos.
the murder capital of the United States, you know? Like, you'd be an idiot. It's like, you don't do that. And that's a funny the South where I am in North Carolina, yeah, nobody honks the horn. Like, there's no I think once you get in the South too, I don't know if it's heat related. I'm not really too sure what it is. But when Yankees come down here, the maybe it's a frequency of the land. I don't know really why. I think it's the heat and there's no snow. It's easy. Everybody just smooths out and their asshole level goes down to 0, and you just don't ever hear a car honking. You don't hear people yelling out the windows and shit, whatever. It's, yeah,
Yeah, there is
first
something about the South. Yeah.
yeah, it just you just don't have that, and then I tell people like, "Hey, if you come here if you're coming from the North, if I talk to another Yankee, I'm like, "Hey, don't tell anybody. Don't this is really good, everything is cool here." "Oh, yeah, yeah, I know." I tell them it's terrible, "Don't move." 'Cause then you don't want them, and that's always what happens. There's, like, this shifting of, like, as an area grows, right, it all just gets contaminated and gets shitty, and then people wanna migrate out of it that are tired of that, and then they go to the new area, and then it's so
Yeah.
on and so on, it just keeps
What's
migrating.
don't California my Texas type of mentality.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
But there's no way to stop it. Like, when
yeah.
you start see yeah, like the Californians that are here, because 'cause we've got a lot of tech people that are here. Oh, man, I've got a guy, he's a customer, and he was a DA in the county that is in, like, San Francisco, and, he's so nice, this guy. He's retired, but he's like, "This place is great." He comes out, he's, like, barefoot, shorts on, and I was like, "You don't mind the heat?" He's like, "Ah, it's so damn cold up in North California." He says, "I love the humidity and the heat. I love it. It's so different. We got trees and grass, and everybody's nice." And he's telling me, he's like, he goes because he was an attorney, he had to wear a suit, his outfit, his, like,
Right.
battle attire. And he's like, I'd go get a cup of coffee, and he says, everybody around me's got, tattoos and blue hair and all this other shit, and they're looking at me like they wanna, like, eat me, like
Yeah.
I'm like an enemy, I'm just doing my job, like, "Come on, man," And, he says, "But here," he said, "everybody just kinda minds themselves. Everybody it's like it's a functioning society." I'm like, "Huh." It's like, "That's great." I was like, "So what do you think we got, 20 years?" Because 'cause we'll joke about it. I was like, "Until that starts contaminating the space, do you think it's 20 years maybe?" He's like, "Yeah, maybe 20 years." But yeah, so you have to, like, constantly keep moving, and then that I don't know, that turnover and people that are leaving, those spaces, leaving the North and, the West Coast, they're making it for it's some reason why they're doing it. The reason why they're letting all these things happen is to get the people that have enough faculties to realize, like, "Hey, there's a problem here. We need to get the hell out of Dodge." Alright? And it's like they have allowed it to get to that point. It's not that they're driving it to make it some socialistic whatever narrative bullshit that they say. There's some underlying reason that they wanna sift out the thinkers from the non-thinkers. like the lower level type people to get them to move to the better areas. And whether that's an earth change thing, I mean, there's so much speculations behind it. Um, but yeah, it that also it's like on the digital side, you could see these things. That's another thing where the intermarifica kind of comes into play is like knowing where you're accounting for these people that are coming across in digital identification, like knowing where everybody is going in. So that's I wouldn't say I'm not concerned where I'm at, but because it's thriving, so I feel good about where I'm at. But yeah, if I was in one of those spaces and I've got destroyed infrastructure, crappy waters, stuff like it's uninhabitable, then I would be really concerned with the reasons why no one's bothering to fix it because it doesn't work. So they're just gonna like let it go and have it be wiped out or earthquake or whatever the hell it is, you know?
There's this notion that people believe that they have to tell you, right? They have to tell you what you're
Mm.
doing. It's a revelation of the method. I'm like, no, 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 man. They're
Mm-mm.
incentivizing the people that can actually do something worth the value, right? And moving them out, right? How many signals do you need? Um, it gets to the point just where it's like it becomes so ridiculous, right? You can see right now with the political landscape, it becomes so ridiculous that the mind moving around. It's like, yes, now put that into infrastructure, put that into a city, municipality, and see how absurd it is. That's a signal for you. If you're aware of those signals, if you can see it, there's a reason you see it, right? And you should plan accordingly.
Yes.
But you're free to make your decisions, right? You use the term "lost at sea" a lot. Uh, and I like the term. It's like you're never really lost, right? If you know how to navigate by the stars, right?
Right.
Navigate by
That's
the
right.
gods, not navigate by the energies.
Some
If
kind
you
of
can
navigation.
see, yeah, if you
Yes.
can see what you're doing, or you can see where it's going, you know how to navigate away from it.
God,
And
I
I
mean,
think that's
when I was young, I grew up in like the very tip of New York State. It was Pennsylvania, Erie, like in that area. Never been to New York City. And I always say that because it's like we weren't New Yorkers. We weren't even considered upstate. It's called Western New York. So um everybody bitched about the taxes. Like all the New York State stuff basically that you see in the news was the same shit that they'd have to deal with over on the west side, all the way over like Ohio, way over there. Nothing, just cows and just nothingness, Amish. But they still have the same policies, right? And it's so ultra right wing. Like you'd see more Confederate flags there than you would in the South. That's how like redneck it is. The racing and everything else. And I'm like, why doesn't anybody leave? Like, it was never like we talked in high school, like people I went to school with, and everybody's gonna leave. I'm like, oh, I'm getting the hell out of here. And a lot of people did leave with going to college, but a lot of them came back, and it's because they have family there, whatever else. And then on Facebook, I'm friends with them on Facebook. They're still bitching. And I'm like, you guys, like, what are you doing? Like you could at least there we're so close to Pennsylvania. Just move like 15, 20 minutes south and you're in Pennsylvania. They're complaining about the tax. Like, why would you be taxed? Oh, I love the lake. And I'm like, okay, well, you could live in Pennsylvania and then just put your boat in at one of the harbors and then I don't want to drive the 20 minutes. It's too far. They'll say shit like that. I'm like, I'm driving like, we're commuting, you got like a 2-hour commute. I'm like, you don't know what it's like. They live in such a small reality that they're all right with it that way. Because they've never branched out and got to see other areas to see how more functioning societies work. So, well, yeah, the only people that know are people that have left, and it's like a brainwashing. We'll talk and say like, they will say like, "Well, I'll never go back." Like people that are in the South, and say like, "I'll never go back. There's no reason to go back." And I'm like, I totally get it. And they have like, it's such a backwards way of thinking that it's not healthy. It's not like you're totally changing your ideals. You're just you're opening up the possibilities of there being a better environment for you and take away the bitching. Well, again, like maybe those people are like their soul path is to bitch. Like they just want to be in an environment and that's their servitude, right? So I'm like, hey, and I've told people, I'm like, hey, if you want to be angry, you're in the right place. So you're just an angry person, not a big deal. Just roll on or whatever.
Yeah. There seems to be something. I don't know if it's my family or just the people I involve myself with. It's constant complaining, but not changing a damn thing, right? And it's like, oh, this is what you wanted in
So that
life.
but that's
Okay.
consistent. That's like a
Yeah.
common human element of just complain, 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 and be like, "Okay, why don't you just circle the wagons and then, like, write some shit down and just chip away at it. Just get something started." But I said, Nat, like, regular human beings, that is their tendency. So how do you govern over that? You know what I mean? And then they'll talk everybody's a big talker, and then if you get enough people talking, again, comes back to social media, as a governance, you'll say like, you're governing over all these people. No one's going to do anything, but that one person might, you know. And if I get enough people that are talking enough and going in the wrong direction, then we're going to have a real big problem. And then I'm going to have to deal with it because I don't have a lid on this. And it's just the tendencies of humans. The workaround where they're going in the future, it certainly seems like they've got it pretty well covered. I think that, the through blockchain and AI, that there's gonna be such a dilution of information that no one's gonna really have any clue on what way to go. And that's part of what we're doing is like, this is a good first conversation we're having is like, this platform is really about trying to discern real information from people that are out there and really get like, boots on the ground. What are you seeing and what are you experiencing? What have you experienced? Because the shit that we see out on social media and what you get from other people like word of mouth, it's not any good anymore because they're all contaminated. So the only people that are going to really know are business owners, people that are in it, like knee deep in a specific market, and they're going to see these changes happening right in front of their eyes. And then us, like as business owners, are going to try to figure out, like, okay, how do I make this digestible for my consumers? Because now I have the changes. I can't change any of my, all the two-party authentications and the banking shit and all. I can't change any of that. Who am I going to go, fight? I can't. If I can't get into my email today because I have to redo passwords or whatever else, and the question is like, why do I have to do all this shit? And that's why we know of the blockchain and how all these things are changing and what is on the horizon for people. And it's not going to matter to them. Like I said, we've talked about this, like the Whitney Webbs and the Catherine Austin Fitts talking about how it's like they're taking your freedoms on. Be like, no, you people didn't. Nobody was taking advantage of it in the first place, and all you're doing is bitching anyway. So all we're doing is they're making the system, putting a couple extra hoops in place to get rid of those, trust fund babies, the people that really aren't doing anything, that are like, like sucking on the tit of reality and be able to turn that money back over because there's so many people I've come into contact with that do not deserve what they have because they're multi-generational wealth families. And the way that they've been set up in the old system is basically to hide everything. And now we have all this transparency that comes in, and it's going to make it so that you're going to have to be responsible for your own stuff, and if you're an ass sitter, well, too bad. But if you're somebody that wants to go after and go get something, make something of yourself, then, the world will be your oyster.
Yeah. And you see, if we tie that in together with this fear narrative of Depop, right? You had always said in our private conversations, you had always said you don't need a Depop when it's an energetic change, right? Individuals energetically change and become, let's say, more motivated. Well, the old part of them that was very lazy or not looking to change, right? The complainers dies off. But there's this new birthing, right, of these individuals who now have something to look forward to now have something to do. Uh, but they don't switch when the old infrastructure is in place, right? So you have to destroy it and you have to remove it so it motivates them, right? It gets them into a position of changing. We talk about that with the mind alchemy programming changing. And a lot of this is just look at this reality as a way to communicate with others. You and I were talking about entrepreneurs, and it's basically just communication with uh with the energies, with the businesses. We know where they're going. So how do I communicate what they are doing to the individuals that don't change? Right. And we have
Right.
to be that bridging
Yeah,
mechanism.
yeah. Yeah, that what we're doing is like is an important bridge factor I think to these changes because we're the doers that are actually going to get it to market. You know, it's like, okay, you guys are making all these changes behind the scenes. We can see where things are going. Shit, I'm going to have to do all these extra things, but it's going to make my environment more robust because I know that there's a lot of people out there that are sitting on a lot of money and assets that aren't going to do any of this shit because they're just gonna, I want it the old way. I want to do the old way and be like, whereas somebody that there's only so much to go around on the real, like regular reality. And if you're in one of these towns that have like these families that have been around for multi generations and they own like most of the town, you'd be like, well, it'd be kind of cool. Like if you can, instead of them owning like the grocery store, everything, they own everything in town. Wouldn't it be cool if they kind of had some like a wrench into their whole family thing and they lost, you know, not all of it, but there was like uh, you know, a way to kind of flush it out, you know, like if they really want it, like when you get 2, 3 generations into a family of people that have made it, they very few are very good at keeping it going. That's the hardest thing. Like they people talk all this shit about these root families that, you know, they go on all these centuries and everything, and they're the worst, and they're the ones that are creating all this shit. And be like, if they can stick it together for that many centuries, you know, and keep the family together and keep some kind of business model rolling, I'm like, good for them. I'm like, you know, you're gonna always I think like you look in the DuPont family, I mean, the Trump family, they're not all winners. There's all like ones that are like getting us up in drugs or, you know, there's murders. The Kennedys is another example. I mean, and those are like pretty low level ones. I mean, we're talking about the upper levels. Like, that would be very difficult, I think, to keep it going. And no, if you were like upper level hierarchy and you had, let's say, like a couple hundred members of your family, and you had one kid that was just an absolute, drugs, killed people, whatever, just a mess. That publicity, you can't have that in the family. So I wouldn't want that. So if people can keep that going, just imagine for hundreds and hundreds of years, be like, "Oh, man." So, yeah, there'll be a turnover, but I think it's gonna be real gradual. Like, people aren't gonna really know of what's gonna happen until people start dying. And then that's whenever the changes are going to really become evident because that's when the transaction gets flipped. You know, that they're going to be responsible for identifying who owns what through that beneficial ownership. And that's a really big one that us business owners had to do last year. We knew about it a couple of years ago, but identifying like who actually owns what in the company. And that seems like, oh, that's a pretty simple thing, but no, that's a way that all the rich people own a bunch of stuff or have access to a bunch of stuff and don't have their name on any of it. So they don't have to pay any taxes. If your name isn't on it as a beneficiary, then you have no taxation. But now you're required to have it through the federal government. So that is probably the biggest element to this whole thing of how it's going to throw the wrench in the works of the rich because now they're going to have to account for everything that they have whenever the transactions get turned over. And we've already got stories of this already hitting. Like I've got a couple of contacts where people have told me that they can't get people approved through Google. They can't, Google won't do business with them because they can't provide the proper tax documentation that they own the shit. So
Mhm.
it's going to happen, but it's going to be real slow. I don't think it's going to be some Thor hammer dropped and everybody's just going to be scurrying
No.
around like, nah,
And
no.
the way this reality works is there's always stories, right? To move the masses. So doesn't matter if it's trade wars, actual wars, pandemics, just natural events. The end point is to get you there, right? Whatever the stories are to get you, like cities going bankrupt, so they no longer have the pensions, right? It's a filtering mechanism to see who are the doers and who are the complainers. We don't need
Yes.
complainers for the rebuild. We need
Right.
doers, right? The
Right.
doers do, and then allow for the complainers to exist and maintain the status quo. And
Yeah.
I think that's energetically, when you view it that way, there is no fear. There's only action and inaction. And pay attention to when these, where we go on or we go off, trust the plan, it's always inaction, right? It's bunker down, have your homestead, inaction, right? It's like, no, 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 pay attention to where the energies are going so you know how to navigate it, because you don't want to be stuck in a neighborhood that's going to the gangs and you're stuck there because you didn't want to move because this is the way it's always been. Right.
Or the city not doing, yeah,
Right.
whatever. You're defunding your police, or it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Like, and how you'd stay in that area is it's insane. Like, if there's no control and anyone, if you have no policy holders, officers out, then that's lawlessness. And then soon there'll be, you won't be able to run a business. Since there's no businesses, everything just goes to hell. I said that, like, about that one video I talked about Stanton, Virginia, and how basically all the conservatism of town has all been pushed out. It's a tiny little town. And it'd be like, well, okay, guys, real smart. This is exactly what happened in South Africa, and all the little countries in South Africa, whenever they pushed out all the whites, it's like white genocide down there. And they don't know how to do anything. The locals are like, they don't know how to farm. They don't know how to do anything. That's brilliant, guys. Let's kill the farmers that have been here for multi generations, that have been running this system. We don't like them because they're white, and we're going to go ahead and kill them. And oh, does anybody know how to run this machine? Like, no. Do you know how to fix this? No. Do you know how to do it? No. But again, it's a design thing. Like, go ahead and send them into chaos. Oh, you want it this way? Okay, we'll do it. See what happens. Uh,
Yeah. You had mentioned Indians from Murifica. You had mentioned the same sort of the same logic and trope that I hear mentioned a lot, where people say the younger generations are lazy, right? And I view it from a different point of view. I see the younger generations are realizing it's sort of a rigged game, right? Because you
yeah, like they
see,
can't win no matter what
yeah,
direction they go. There's no point in trying.
yeah, you see this uprising in OnlyFans and stuff like that, but you also see these Twitch and these streamers that are just like multimillionaires overnight, right? Same thing with the crypto. People that invest in crypto, just multimillionaire early on. Right now, they're really, and it's like, yeah, these stories are there sort of to incentivize you to say, this is where we're going. You see how much reward, here's a reward mechanism that you get for going down this route. Go down this route, right? This creator, uh, advertising, entertainment sort of thing with the AI coming out now. It's going to be a lot easier. It's like, yes, we want you to go there because we want you to train this AI. We'll reward you for it, right? We'll give you ad revenue or whatever it is, but you're essentially training the AI to be creative. And from an
Yeah.
energetic standpoint, right? If you know how to manage humans, right? Again, we're thinking, think outside the box, that you might have to manage other entities coming in that are different to humans, but you still need the same control mechanism here to guide it, right?
Yeah, if
It's
I was looking at it from a business perspective, the only ones that seem to be doing those, like TikTok, like the video, if you create whatever, just people doing like social media stuff. It's the newer generations that the older us, like Gen X's, we can't really relate to them. So there are consumers. So if I could really get in their heads to figure out what I need to produce to sell to these guys and like how they work, that would be really beneficial instead of just like guessing and putting something out there to see if they go ahead and pull trigger on it, because that's not very efficient. Because most Gen X and up, we're not really looking at, we're not on those platforms. So it's not for us. But the AI would be able to, we can use that and plug in XYZ to tell us what to do. Like as a business owner, you don't really care if somebody wants chicken tacos or steak tacos or pork, whatever. And if pork sells better than chicken, then you're going to sell, right? You're just going to make sure that you have more pork on hand, in your trailer or whatever. So, uh, that's what you need to be more efficient moving forward is more data, more information moving forward. And on the blockchain stuff, like what we're finding is that like the stuff that I'm getting into, there is no information on it unless you pick up the phone old school and get somebody on the horn and just say, "Hey, we need to have a meeting. You need to tell me what you know." And the younger generations, they don't really do that. And, that networking element that was like we had to have growing up
Right.
is been really evaporated. So that's why, like, if I send emails out, people, they're like, they hit me right up. I can do business really easy and not, I don't wait because it's like it's emerging markets. And yeah, I get information, which usually whenever something is really humming, you can't get anybody on the phone. That's when something's all burned up. So that to me is telling me, okay, this is definitely the right direction to be going in, that this is what's happening. And there's already a lot of money behind the scenes that's pumping into this system that yeah, mainstream media, nobody's even catching it. Nobody really has an understanding of how the whole dynamic is going to be working out and how robust the US economy is going to be because of it. So yeah, it's going to be really cool. I'm super excited about this. This is going to be great. As soon as once we get the email stuff done, like get all the website and stuff and everything done, and I want to be able to like make face and send out the emails with our identification for our domain. Because I want to make like the first steps that I move forward in searching and talking to these people, that we're just identified as who we are, what we're doing, our initiative is, because yeah,
Well,
it's gonna be good.
yeah. Well, we're giving life to this endeavor, right? We're putting in the energy.
Yeah.
To touch back on the original uh topic, they use humans to mine or dig their tunnels as an expenditure, right? It's just a war of attrition. It has to get done. It doesn't matter who's doing it, who's a useful tool, as long as it gets done. So pay attention to where they're building these AI data server centers.
Yeah, I
'Cause
looked at those, what you sent
yeah,
me earlier. Yeah. So
that's where
Virginia,
they're
that Northern Virginia section, I saw, my daughter's in Charlottesville, that's where University of Virginia's at, and then but driving up through there, it's nothing. It's wide open. Like, if you were gonna, like, put something in there, it could easily handle that, and it's simple, close proximity into North Carolina, into Durham and Raleigh, obviously over to DC. It's in a very nice centralized place, and it's in the mountains, but a lot of it's in the foothills of, just like right on the other side of the mountains in Virginia. So I was like, yeah, that area can definitely handle more people for sure. And that's a really nice environment too. You're getting kind of like foothills weather. So you get like cool mountain breezes. And so if people don't know what we're talking about, Franklin had sent me something today about, um, what was it? Data centers, and other areas in the nation that are going to be like, highly sought after attraction zones for living, over the next, 20, 30 years. And it was listing like Dallas, Fort Worth, Las Vegas. And a lot of this has to do with power. Electricity and power output is like a really big factor for this, because if everything is moving digital and data storage and everything else is so important, you're going to have some way to power the thing. So there's areas that you can already see that they're already setting up infrastructure to accommodate for what's coming in the future. So like if you're not in these areas, or if you're young or you've got children, you're like, "Oh, well, we're, what would be a really good place to go live, like in the future and put roots in the ground?" These areas would be a higher probability of
right.
success than going, staying in your all small little town and then moving somewhere else. But yeah, that was, that whole stretch. It's, one of the towns that's about an hour north of Charlottesville is called Culpeper. There already, I think there was like 6 or 7. I found another map that was, data centers. So, but Virginia is gonna be loaded with data. That's gonna
Yeah.
be, yeah.
And we know that these the people that run this game plan knowing the rules of the game. So they've already done their research as to where the areas are going to be okay. So if they're
Yeah.
front loading all the effort there, it's because, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
no matter what happens. and this
Yeah.
area is going to be that
Yeah,
big.
and then you just kinda start following the dots, and you're like, "Okay, there's a high-speed rail that's already, on the table that's supposed to run from, like, Richmond down to Raleigh." So basically that whole from, I think Northern Virginia all the way down into Raleigh, all the way over to the mountains is going to be, like, a big hot zone. All the way down to like the tip of Georgia and South Carolina, which is like Spartanburg, South Carolina, that type area. And yeah, it already is pretty good, but I think in the future we're looking at it being like a major metropolitan strip, you know.
And one of the things I liked about Tampa when I was visiting out there was the fact that there was such an influx of individuals from lots of different places. So it reminded me of the college days where everybody was just from somewhere else, and you can communicate and learn from them and get entirely different worlds that you never even knew, right? Like people from Indiana or Ohio, you're like, oh wow, I didn't know that you guys thought this way. But it's just like a mixing of people. And if you know how this game runs, it's a mixing of DNA. They want to keep DNA alive and variants in order to keep business going, right? Because again, humans tend to stagnate. They
That would
tend
make
to,
sense, like my Stanton, Virginia experience of why it is so left wing because all that it's like imagine it being like a filtration system. So like if that region, because Stanton is basically kind of in the middle of that new tech hot zone that's going to be in Virginia, that would make sense that if you could like overcompensate for that type of left hand energy, that you bring in businesses that will bring in like
yeah,
real stuff, and then
additional,
it
right?
will soften that energy. But that's a lot more. I think they're a lot more acceptant to these changes, the left hand side than the right, because if you go further south, that's when you get into like heavy Confederate territory. Like North Carolina doesn't really have that shit. Um, not like in Virginia. Like, as soon as you get into Virginia, like, you'll see Confederate flags still flying and, like, really hillbilly um, but that's harder to break. That's like deliverance shit. It's, like, harder to break that type of trend than it is to go the other direction, to go to the ones that are kinda weaker on the left-hand side and then bring in so, because it didn't make any sense, like, in being there, but now seeing the data centers, that makes perfect sense. Be like, "Okay, let's go ahead and soften it and put all these DEI people in here and make everything ultra left wing and rainbows everywhere and everything else, and then we're gonna roll into corporations and all these data centers." Yeah, it's easy.
Yeah. It just to touch back on that, the Confederate stuff, it's almost like, yeah, we don't need this old energy anymore.
Uh-uh.
Like we're trying to break it. But even the value, right, in getting people to change again, touching back on that transmutation is, can you take a Confederate hardcore and make them switch? Right? Because that's the value at the energetic, the transportation. Out of 100,000 of them, can one of them glean onto this information and just make a totally different change that just breaks their old reality? But
If you
they
moved them.
survive it.
Yeah, if
Little
it's the
bit,
same
but that's
territory, yeah, no, but that's the thing with Stanton.
we'll
I
see,
said that
right?
you don't have any that left-hand energy and drag queens and all that business, like, in the mountains and around surrounded by rednecks and shit. It's so weird. It's just doesn't it seems like it's like Haight-Ashbury is in the middle of Virginia in the mountains. It's so weird. Um, so
But wouldn't it be interesting?
yeah,
That's
I
what I was like,
you get, like, I don't know, lynchings and shit. You get, like, hate, crimes and shit like that. There because again, like, the right-hand extreme side, they are the gun-toting, like, they're all idiots, either which side you go on, it doesn't matter. They're all idiots, but the ones that are actually gonna, like, do something that's heinous typically are going to be the ones that have the guns, and the guys that, and it's like, I'd rather be around a dude in like high heels and a feather boa and shit. I don't feel intimidated by
right,
that.
right,
You
right,
know what
right,
I mean? Like he's gonna take my life,
right.
but if I were the guy has, overalls on and no t-shirt, he's shirtless, no overall, that type of look, and I'd be a lot more concerned with that than I would
Yeah,
be with the feather boa dude,
yeah.
you know.
He's using the term boy all the time. It's like, what?
Yeah, yeah, right. I mean, it's subtle. I mean, it's like, but it's definitely if I had to lean in one way, I'm like, I feel a little bit better with this one. Yeah, like if I had to leave my kids with somebody, it'd be like probably the Feather Boa guy over, Hillbilly Joe, with his banjo. I don't know, maybe. I don't. Just a hair.
I think
Yeah,
we'll leave it at there. That's a good conclusion because it lets us know like how it lets the audience know how we're thinking, taking
yeah,
everything into account. It's not business, it's not politics, it's not spiritual, it's everything. And just
yeah.
understanding that our goal is just to be the transmuters, be the
That's a
catalysts.
that's a tough thing. I think if we don't talk about all those things, and as I said, it's so vast the information that we cover, is that there's so many people that pigeonhole themselves into those things. They get like, okay, the politics is going to be the savior, or it's going to be spirituality. I'm going to get beamed up by Palladians, or it's going to, whatever it is, it's some kind of thing. And they get stuck and be like, at the end of the day, you still need to make your mortgage. You still need, are going to have to buy a car. You're going to have to put fuel in it. You're going to have to, you're going to want to take a vacation. You're going to, and well, put yourself into the newer space until you get beamed up by your space aliens or whatever else. Like you just can't
Right.
quit reality, like it's
Right.
gonna keep Earth's gonna keep turning. So it's like, okay, well, until it stops turning, I'm gonna have to get up the next day and I'm gonna have to do XYZ. So I might as well make the most of it. I'm here anyway. And like, what do we have to work with? Well, we got this new shit that they're, doing with blockchain and all this other stuff. And there's a lot of opportunities that are out there. Well, what are, and then you can kind of get into it. So it's like, um, just, and then maybe it goes 23 years and nothing happens, you're covered. Think of it as an insurance policy. And it's interesting because it's new, and the amount of money that's being pumped into it right now, if you aren't paying attention to it, then you must have been living under a rock because, and again, like why, and we're going to get into this, like, why is it such a, beneficial to the future of of human nature in general and these, digitation and blockchains and things like that. And it's not all just for control and all this other business. It's about just keeping track of everything, you know. It's like, so, yeah, I think it's a good place to stop. I think, yeah, because you just keep going on and on about it. But yeah, I think it kind of gives like a pretty good general overview of like topics and things that we talk about that are all interwoven to it, and how it's so easy to find that YouTube channel where it just kind of strikes a chord with you, and then you start going off on that tangent with that person. The next thing you know, you're freaking Heaven's Gating yourself or some crazy bullshit,
Yeah.
Like, come on. I'm like, that's all it's interesting, you can be part of it, but it's like, at the end of the day, put your toga up on the weekend, and Monday morning, you're still gonna have to go to work.
The Palladians also have their jobs and gifts.
It's those Arcturians, man. Yeah.
And we'll talk about that later on too. How those stories are also just stories to control. So it's not that one is right or the other. It's all stories to get motion taking place.
Yeah, and it's not that it's not a real thing, they've created it as a real thing in the reality. So that's another thing that we'll get into that, like, as far as retrocausality, like how Mandela effect works, and your awareness to a thing in the reality manifests it as a thing, as a real thing. So just the idea of something, and that's in quantum mechanics. So just the observer, you get enough observers looking at something that's just a story, it makes it out of thin air. And people are like, "What?" I'm like, "Yes, that's how it works, guys." So, if you're not, you don't have to be into it, but you sure as shit better learn about it, because if it catches a head of steam on it, then they can run it as a storyline and it'll just be made up. Not like fake, like they're gonna be like Stanley Kubrick in the thing, and just doing it on the soundstage, but like literally the reality will produce like a holographic reality. Like it will produce what it is that you're imagining and thinking, or whatever the people are believing. If they can get enough people believing it, it'll manifest. And that's
So,
that's
yeah,
kinda that's scary shit. And when you once you
and,
start tailing that and get to that level, it's like anything goes, dude. And then it's like,
and that's the masses. So this is
gosh.
why This
control
is why
them.
this is why you have martyrs. When somebody picks up too much steam, it's like take them out, right?
Yeah,
This is the
man.
Martin Luther King or Malcolm X. Too much movement behind them, but they don't touch Al Sharpton, right? It's like not
Yeah. And isn't it funny,
because
like, now you think with all of the, like, the black artists, everything that are out, that there'd be somebody else that would come along that would be, in that kind of realm. And then, like, in my generation, they had, like, Farrakhan and, Jesse Jackson was still, he got a little political, but like, they got, like, extreme, it went like Malcolm X on steroids, you know what I mean? And I think that that kind of, like, toggled it and turned it kinda off, and then turned it more towards, not, whereas King was more, light and love type of thing, he was not, a fighter type of dude, kind of a Gandhi type of guy. And that message is great, but they can't make anything off that. I can't, it's not gonna whip them up, you know?
what's it's also when you have too much motion behind it, too much movement behind you.
Yeah,
No, 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 no. You have
yeah,
too much power. Right? The
yeah,
game is rigged. You're
yeah,
not gonna
yeah. This could get a head of steam on it. Like, I remember, like, they did that Million Man March. That was a long time ago.
no
And that, I don't remember how many they came, quarter of a million or something. They didn't come close to hitting the number, but they just don't have the same. Well, again, if you could, again, you need to get to, like, persecution and resistance in that period in society in the United States. It was all over the place, all over the news of guys getting beat with hoses and, fire water cannons and shit like that, and all the civil rights stuff. And then you've got this figure that pops up, and it's like, it's good, so it's got, like, this kind of savior type of thing. And um that's why he was, like, popped out of it. So out of all those people, he's the one that popped out, which is really great when he gets martyred. But, that ultimately what happens. And now we're into, like, this, like, vanilla stage where there isn't anybody that's kind of willing to stand up, that there isn't anybody that, because nobody can really, like, nobody knows what's up or down, because there isn't any real directive. Whereas before, the directive was, like, heinous and destructive, and it was easy to see there was a problem before in the
right.
'60s, you know? So it's like, okay, we'll do this. And now it's like nobody knows what direction to go. It's like,
And again, you knowing how they control the media, they showed it for a reason, right? Because they could have clamped down on it.
yeah,
Cancel
yeah.
culture was
They pump that shit so much. My mother was at a small, I'll probably be the last story. She was at a small, private school south of Pittsburgh called, California University. So it's like, I think it's in Cannonsburg. It's like maybe 30 minutes south of Pittsburgh. Private school, and the Black Panthers went there. It's not, wasn't a big campus, and they locked them all. There was, like, this whole thing on the campus that they locked them up in their dorm rooms with, like, chains on the doors, and, they had bonfires, all this shit. And I remember, at my mother, I asked her, I was like, once I learned about this, screwing with the mind type of thing and the programming and how badly they messed with, the boomer generation, asked her, I said, how did you know they were coming? Like, did they, send a memo to the school? Like, how did they come? Did they all show, oh, they came in on buses. It kinda had, like, a George Soros type of thing going on with it, you know? And she says the guys were walking around with guns, and they had, bullets, like chain bullets, like on a belt, on their, like, around their necks, like in, like X's and cross, whatever. And doing bonfires on the school campus, like, not hurting anybody, but just, like, doing a demonstration, essentially, Black Panthers. And I'm like, and they didn't call the police? Like, that was private property. Like, why didn't they just call the police and haul these guys off? I don't know. And she's like, yeah, it was a big thing that the dean called them in, and all the students they were in an auditorium, and the dean said that this is going to happen. And it was like, it was a staged event, but they didn't see it that way. They were scared out of
right,
their minds.
right.
And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are like, there's no way that they organized that whole thing. Like, why would they go to your campus? Like, why wouldn't they go to, like, a big one? And they did, but not, like, why would they bother going to the small one? And who organized it? Who paid
Yeah.
these guys to go do that? Like, it's free. They're doing it just. Like, oh, they've
Well,
been doing this forever.
yeah. What do you? What's the recent one? The Patriots or something, where they're all wearing blue shirts and khaki pants and showing up in U-Haul trucks. whatever that is, the Patriot Front or something. I'm like, yeah, it's the same thing. Everybody just happens to have the same clothes on and following the same rules. I'm like, okay, it's always a show.
Yeah, they're all getting paid.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we're gonna sign off here.